Hi everybody, how are you going? Mr. McGivern here. We're going to talk about structure today, structuring teams. We're going to learn three things. We're going to learn why structure matters. You're going to learn how to develop and structure your leadership team. And you're going to establish your team's shared purpose, set norms, and assign team roles. It's all good stuff. So I'll see you soon. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's get going on this. So why structure leadership? You might remember in class a while ago, I put a line on the board and we looked at different types of leadership. And at one end of the spectrum, we had what's called laissez-faire. That's where there's no particular leader. And so if you're organizing something and there's no particular leader, one has to wait for leadership to emerge. It's not really effective if you're going to be goal driven. At the other end of the spectrum, you had a situation where there was one leader. Authoritarian systems have this. And when you think of the word authoritarian, I'm sure ideas jump to mind of different sorts of leaders that really have an agenda, really take charge. And in some circumstances, that might be called for. But what we're going to look today is more about shared leadership and forming groups and working with groups and helping groups grow together. So we sort of sit in the middle of the spectrum when we're talking about this. So let's have a look at this in some detail. Now, have you ever been part of a team that worked really great? You know, just to bring that to mind and imagine what was it like to be in that team? What behaviors did that team have? How did you work together? How did you know you were successful? And if you haven't been in a great team, have a think about one that you may have seen, like a great sporting team or something like that, a great debate team. What behaviors did they engage in and how did they get to be functioning and working well together? Now, when I think of a good team, there are a few times in my life where I've been part of a wonderful team. I think my first experience here at ISAC in the summer school, and definitely working with the teachers that we do now, we really have a desire to do good work. We're really outcome driven. We're about helping each other and we're about learning as a community. So I'm going to show you some slides here and we're going to kind of work backwards. And we're going to look at what does it take and what do effective teams try and produce. So let's have a look at this right now. Okay, so on this picture here, you can see in the right-hand column, three words: outcome, capacity, and learning. Okay, so the first one is an effective team understands exactly what it is that they're trying to achieve. They're trying to achieve a very specific outcome. If you don't have an outcome, then you probably should get one. Otherwise, you might be spending a lot of energy otherwise. Now, capacity, do you know what that word means? Capacity is skilling up. So the idea is that if you're in a team that is working well, not only can you achieve your goal, but hopefully every single member in that team is improving in their capacity, improving their skills, improving what they do. And the third thing there is a third outcome of group, and that is learning. That you are actually learning together, that you are taking the time to analyze what's going on, what roles are working, who's doing what, and you're constantly applying what you are working out to improve yourself. Sometimes people do this on instinct, but we're actually talking about taking the time to build this in and work it out. So if these are the three things that we're looking for, then let's go over here to the left-hand column. These are three conditions that must be met in order for those other things to happen. Okay, so we have these three words: bounded, stable, and interdependent. Right. So any group that you can imagine that is doing well, is an effective team, knows how it is bound together. They actually know, and they've spent the time to work out what is it that brings them together. Whether it's values, that bring them together, whether it's the goal and the drive to do something in particular. But if you know how you are bound together, you then absolutely know that you are dedicated towards the same outcome. I think that kind of makes sense. The second thing is stability. And this is something that goes a little bit wrong at our school sometimes in our groups. If you want to build capacity, if you want to build each other in each member of the team, you actually need people to turn up. Momentum is lost when people don't turn up to clubs, for example. If you constantly have people that are unreliable, that don't turn up, that say they're going to and they don't, that is unstable. And you actually need people to be there. I mean, that's very hard to ask people to come sometimes because of the private and the public relationships that we talked about before. But rule number one is if you sign up, turn up. The last thing is interdependency. So in the picture that we had for, say, an authoritarian group or a group where there's one leader with a strong vision, it doesn't often lead to a situation where everybody is learning, where the group is learning, because you're just following what someone says. So the idea is that you want to develop roles within your group, within your team, where everyone relies on everyone else to learn and grow. So not one person becomes the expert. We share our expertise with each other so we can all grow. For example, good example of this is a basketball team. So if all of a sudden you didn't have a point guard dribbling the basketball down the court, what do you think is going to happen? So each of the roles that are designed rely on each other to succeed. This is also why a lot of clubs kind of fold, because there are one or two people driving them. And then when you take away that one or two people, there's nothing being learned. There's no capacity happening. There's no outcome, and people become disenfranchised. So the next thing about that is the middle column. Purpose, norms, and roles. Okay, so let's look at the top line. So if you are bounded, you know why you're there. Creating a purpose statement together is actually really great. It's a little bit like your organizing sentence. In fact, it could be your organizing sentence. If you understand your purpose and everyone knows that, then you're more likely to reach your outcome. If you go on a tangent and it goes in some crazy direction, you have to be able to bring it back to your purpose, or at least ask yourself, is the purpose still the purpose, or have things changed? People like change. It's hard to stay on purpose. So the second thing, stability. In order to have stability, you need to create your own norms in your group. And that helps build the capacity of everyone in the group. What norms are, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail later. Norms are a list of things that absolutely need to happen in your group, in your team. And an absolute list of things that you don't want to see in your team. What makes you work well together? What makes you work at your best as an individual? What do you need in order to grow? So norms help people build capacity in their own way. And on the last thing, interdependency, that doesn't happen. You need to allocate roles within your group. And if everyone understands their role and becomes an expert in their area, they then can share that expertise and everyone can learn along the way. So bounded, stable, and interdependent are the conditions that must be met. I'm going to ask you today to develop a purpose statement, some norms, and look at the roles in your team. And hopefully, if you can do all those things, you're going to have good outcomes that are based in how you're bound together in your purpose. You're going to build capacity because people will turn up and follow the rules that you've set together. And you're going to learn more things from each other as you build your own knowledge and you understand your roles. So let's get on to an example of that. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Here's an example, and I've shown you this a little bit before, from the strategic team, which we have here at school. So here's our organizing statement. So this is an example where we used our organizing statement as our purpose because it does have a theory of change. We've done all that work before. So as a group, we sat down and we crafted up our organizing statement, our purpose statement. So we are organizing the strategic team to realize the mission of UWC ISAC Japan by coaching and empowering each other to develop practices and cohesive programs to achieve purposeful growth in our respective teams by June 2020. Then we went through and we created our norms. So things we absolutely need to see. We wanted people to be prepared, to not just turn up and wing it or not bring their things. We want people to be prepared because time is precious. We wanted people to be decisive. This is a group that has to make decisions. So you have to stand somewhere. And in order to stand somewhere, you've got to do your homework. We wanted people to take turns in leading discussions. So it just doesn't turn into a situation where one person does that. We understand that people are going to have hard days, but we did want to have a culture of being constructive and speaking freely for growth. We also acknowledge that sometimes you have to sort of talk through things in real time to try and find meaning. So we wanted to have a freedom to say what we think and feel and to be open to others. We wanted to be invested in how each other are feeling rather than just be a cognitive sort of dry process. We wanted to share. We wanted to be curious and open, and we wanted to laugh. We wanted to have fun in this group. We have a lot of serious work to do, so to enjoy each other's company is an important thing. And we came up with these together. This wasn't one person saying, you should do this. This is our norms. We actually went around the table and we worked out what that would be. Now, norms are okay, but you actually need a norm correction. So what happens if someone doesn't turn up and they're not prepared? What if someone gets really cranky and sort of just starts going not curious and they shut down? What if someone gets harsh? So you want to actually put in a norm correction. So this was ours. A norm correction gives you the permission to actually say, hey, hang on a minute. Things are not how they should be. We agreed on this and now something different is happening. So a norm correction should be something that is not like aggressively punitive. It's not trying to punish people, but it can also build the capacity of the group. So ours is simply present to the faculty on projects and successes on behalf of our group and to bring some snacks because everyone likes snacks. And if we look at roles and defining roles, you can see over here on the left, the team members have been developed very intentionally. So, for example, Mr. Hinton and ourselves, Jolyon and myself, we represent the experiential group. So that includes outdoor ed, it includes leadership projects, it includes activities. So we actually have a team that meets about that. So we were selected for this group because of that. Miss Chen, Yaling, and Jennifer, they were selected from the academic committee because they actually run the academic portion of the school. And then we also have Laura and Pierre, and they actually look after the pastoral group, so residential, counseling, all of those sorts of areas. And of course, Azumi's in there as well because she's in charge of the leadership program here. So we need someone in each group who is advocating for leadership and student practicing leadership at every step of the way. So we can say mission driven. So in terms of our roles, we actually understand them quite well as part of our jobs. They're already written down. They're already detailed. But I imagine that in your groups, no one sort of sits down and works out who's doing what and actually allocates those roles. So we're hoping that with all of this different knowledge of different parts of the schools, that we can come together to the same table, and that equips us to make decisions about what we need to do and create how might we and statements and design how we can make changes in a very, very detailed and sort of learning focused way. Okay, so it's time for the worksheet, the homework. And this is what we're going to do. I am going to share with you on the website a place where you can write down what your team's shared purpose is too. There are going to be a few things that you walk through to work out what it is exactly that you want to do. Then I'm going to ask you to, now this might be tricky because you don't have your group. We're off campus, we're all over the world. So you could do this with your buddy if you want this experience, or you could write down what are some things that you would always like to do. You would like if you're embarking on this group, and what are things that you should never do, that you should never see at a meeting. And by going through this process, you may better understand how you work. Remember, if we're looking to improve our capacity, if we're looking to learn, we can do that however we wish. It doesn't have to be drab. It can be something that's really close to what you enjoy. So if you always want to have fun, write that down. What you never want to do is you never want to get complaining about things, then write that down. I never want to complain. I always want to look for a solution here. So, and then don't forget the norm. So remember, the norm is not to punish people. People have good days and bad days. Your norm should always be something that helps your group grow, that helps your group move forward. So for the example I gave you, it could be snacks. It could be, we're going to ask you to volunteer to do the cleanup after the session. I think a lot of people don't want to do these things. They don't want to ask other people to be responsible for their actions. It feels uncomfortable. But remember, if this is a public organization that you're working on, people have a choice to join it or not. And if they have a choice to join it, and they are participatory in the idea of creating norms, they understand fully that there is a consequence to this, a consequence to not doing it. It's not going to work if you just come up with all the norms yourself and tell them this is what they have to do. I mean, no one really enjoys that. It's not the military. It's forming a club or forming a leadership project that you're doing. Okay, and then the last thing is to actually have a think. And again, this is trying to move from abstract into real about the sorts of roles you're going to need in your group. Are you going to need someone that can be look after the budget? Are you going to need someone that organizes this thing versus that thing? Take the time now to sort of write down the different sorts of roles and maybe some of the responsibilities that those people might carry. So then when you do get to the table and you say, here is my team, this is what I'm imagining, I'm looking for people that might be interested to join me. People know what they're getting in for. And you're not going to waste 2 or 3 weeks to work this out. You're going to hit school running, ready to share these things. You still have to keep space so people can bring their own talents to the process. But there's no harm in trying to imagine what your team might be. So follow the prompts and come to a check-in session, and we're going to talk through what you came up with. I'm excited to see what you can do. So there you have it. Structuring leadership is very important. You now have a roadmap. You now have a process that you can go through that can reliably get you to a state where you can communicate effectively what you're trying to do. And you can bring people into a process so you can create leadership with people rather than leadership over people. Give this a go, see what you think, talk to your buddy. Don't forget to check in with me. And I'm hoping that next year, when you hit campus, you can remember this and you can run through this, and we can get going with spending time on the things that you really want to, and create momentum for each other. So thanks, that's it for now. I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.